We're going to be talking about the Iterator friend class inside of the list class. So we'll start with a quick example that sort of shows why we think we need this Iterator class. So for an example, we'll just have an array here with 5 data points. We know we can access the data points from this array. We can go through with our traversal by pointer and sort of just print out every data point from the array. And now we'll move to a list. So we can put all those same data points in the list, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now that we've done that, let's say we wanted to use a for loop and print out each one of the elements. How would we do this? When first looking at the list structure, it can seem sort of difficult because we have this structure that we know the list is made of this structure of nodes, but this whole structure is private. And then we have a pointer to the first and last, but this is also private. So we need a way to access this externally and also move past just looking at the first and last elements. So I think it's super helpful to sort of draw this out. So we can see here that we have a way to access our first and last nodes, but it's sort of not as intuitive. How do we get to these nodes in the center? And this is where the iterator class really comes into effect. So we have this iterator class, and it says it's a friend class of list, which means it can access all the private member variables of list. Now we look to see what the iterator class holds, and it just holds a node pointer. So we can see why this could be useful for our goal, right? If we have a node pointer that can point to nodes, we can say, okay, now we can point to this node. Let's go through all these nodes. Now with traversal by pointer and just using the increment operator in general, we would just think naturally if we increment to integer, it gives us the next integer. If we increment a pointer, it gives us the next pointer, especially when looking at an array that's stored in contiguous data. You just increment this pointer and it skips along to these next things. But our heap storage here that we have for our nodes is not contiguous, right? We don't know how these addresses sort of relate to each other. We don't know if they're next to each other or anything like that. So just by incrementing this node pointer, it would not do what we want it to do. So we have to overload this increment operator. Now let's look at the code. The code itself is actually pretty straightforward. It's just a couple lines. So we assert that the node is there, and then we say this node is now going to point to the next node. That's what the increment does. And this is awesome, right? So we've just taken all this stuff that we couldn't get to, and now we have this node pointer that we can just increment, and then it points straight to the next item. Now we can run back through this example in code and see how useful this is. So we just keep going, skipping through. We set an iterator to the beginning of the list. We make sure it's not hitting the end, and then we can just use that plus plus operator that we've been talking about, and then just go through and print out each item. So that was sort of just an introduction to iterators, why they're useful, and just a general introduction to the plus plus increment operator overload with the iterator class. I hope that was helpful for you guys.